I'd like to introduce my colleagues. First, my name is B.J. Akins, and I'm Vice President of the Board of Directors of the New York County Water District, and I also sit on the Castaic Lake Water Agency Board of Directors. With me tonight is the General Manager of the New York County Water District, Steve Cole. Come on up, Steve. And if you, thank you. Alan, if you'd get that presentation ready. And also, a member of the Castaic Lake Water Agency Board of Directors, Bill Cooper. I was approached by Chris Huff, Scott Wilk's scheduler, a couple weeks ago, and she asked if I would be willing to come speak to the Canyon Country Advisory Committee. I said absolutely. And as it turns out, that's probably a good thing. Mr. Wilk was scheduled already, couldn't be here, but that's probably a good thing because today his daughter, Allison Grace, and his son-in-law, Matthew, brought him a brand new baby. Grandbaby. So I think that's great. And he probably wouldn't be here anyway for that reason. And I don't blame him. He and Vanessa have been excited about having grandchildren. That's a great thing. Especially those of you who have grandchildren, you know how wonderful it can be. What we've decided, or what we would like to do tonight is put before you a familiar face. Steve Cole and Matt Stone, the two general managers of New York County Water District and Castaic Lake Water Agency, respectively, came here and made a presentation at the outset of SB 634. Alan advanced me 50 points when he put it in SB 684, but that's okay. You know, maybe we'll play golf and you can do that. So I thought it would be appropriate for Steve to make the comments tonight. We're going to give you an update on what SB 634 has been doing and how it's doing. We've made some significant progress, and I want to hand it over to Steve. Bill and I probably take our seats, and we'll be here to answer questions at the end. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, BJ, and thank you all for having me back again tonight. As BJ said, Matt and I came, and I had to look back at my notes how long ago it was. It was back in April of last year, as time flies. So we're here again tonight to give you an update of where we are in this process. A lot has happened in the last year since we met with you last time. I'm going to try and go in just deep enough to give people that haven't heard about the subject some background, and try not to bore those that have heard about the subject probably over and over again. I see a lot of the same familiar faces, and so I'll try and do a good job of that, and then we'll be available for questions if we need to drill down in any of those things. Title of the presentation tonight: A New Era for Santa Clarita Valley Water Management, and I think that's really what we're talking about. The vision, as it's proposed here tonight, is something that evolved over roughly a couple years of work that the different agencies did. And the vision is really one of trying to integrate regional water management in the valley. And we have done in this valley a good job of that in the past. But the issues are getting more complex, and we still have what I would consider institutional silos that are tough to communicate across. And that gets really more difficult the more complex the issues become. And so the group got together and we decided we're going to work on trying to fully integrate regional water management, specifically with a focus on our local resources here. We're very fortunate in this valley to have a great groundwater basin, as well as imported supplies that we bring to the valley. But we're looking at ways that we can potentially enhance that, and specifically the way we reuse water here locally. That's really the frontier of where we're headed next in our water supply portfolio here. And it takes a lot of togetherness and ingenuity to get those types of projects to become real and be realized. We really wanted to look at modernizing our governance structure. It says here, make it more voter sensitive. We think we've accomplished that. I'll get into that a little bit in one of the later slides. And do this all in a way that is going to save money at the end of the day, that's going to streamline the operations and governance in a way that can save the community and the ratepayers money. I always think it's good to show a map, just to remind everybody of where we're at and who we're talking about. This is a map that illustrates the different water providers in the community. And you can see it's termed as a patchwork. It's kind of what it looks like. There's things that are spread out. Our district is the one in the green. There's historical reasons that it looks like a patchwork, and it's just a lot of it's the way the community developed over time. So I wouldn't say that there's anything inherently wrong with that, other than as we get into more complex situations, I think integrating those into to one is going to provide the community a better path forward for managing their water resources. So this holistic approach that we're talking about, the first is what I've been mentioning, the integrated planning and full integration of that, not having silos anymore. We've been able to do a good job, but I think we're going to be able to do a lot better. Water reuse, expanding. We have plans to expand 10,000 acre foot in the water reuse program. We're dealing with new laws, and that's something in this business that has really started to take shape over this last decade, is the amount of regulation and laws that we're dealing with now. And so it's a very dynamic environment. One of these, the Groundwater Sustainability Act, is going to change the way groundwater gets managed in this valley. And we are required to do that in a collaborative fashion. So this new district will be able to help in achieving the goals that are laid out in that act. We think it's going to improve reliability and dependability. That's more of a system interconnection concept. Water use efficiency, that's something the state is putting out more and more rules. Obviously, we all experienced that through the last drought years that we had. There were several programs in the valley, probably a little bit of confusion about who waters when and where, and so we're hopeful that it'll bring that approach together. Advocacy, there are a lot of state and federal dollars, more so state. There used to be federal, but it looks like some of the federal money will potentially be coming online again. Approaching those with a unified front on unified projects, you have a lot more success in getting those dollars into the community to help offset costs. And then I spoke about the regulatory climate continually changing. I would put our business up there with any business right now as far as how the rule book is changing and how much it's changed recently. And we only expect that to continue as water becomes more and more scarce throughout the state. I wanted to touch on governance. I mentioned earlier, modernizing the governance was something we spent a lot of time looking at. We were fortunate to have a National Demographics Corporation work with us on that. They really are renowned in understanding the different demographics of how you lay out districts and divisional electoral divisions. So some of you may know, may not know how the governance works right now for our district in Castaic. I'll just go into it a little bit. We have a 5-member publicly elected board. They're all elected at large. So anybody that lived within those green boundaries, those green boxes earlier, can vote for our board of directors. The Castaic board is made up of a mixture. So they have at-large directors, they have divisional directors, and then they also have appointed directors. One of ours, as BJ mentioned, sits on our board, Newhall County Water District, and is appointed to serve on the Castaic Lake Water Agency Board of Directors. So as we started working through with the consultant about ways that we could modernize and restructure this governance formula for the Valley, we think we arrived at a pretty good conclusion of a transitional process where you start with basically both boards coming together. As I mentioned, ours is 5, theirs is 11, but BJ serves on both. So you would go from what's essentially 16 kind of positions down to 15 to start with, and then through election cycles you'll start to revise that and reduce the number until you reach a 9-member board of directors. And that 9-member board of directors we think is going to be really representative of the community. Every member in the community will get to vote for 3. So the area will be divided up into 3 electoral divisions with 3 elected members in each. And so we think that's a really fair way to set up the governance. It'll be a 100% elected board. There will be no appointeds anymore, no at-large. So it'll be 100% electoral division based. We think that's that will put us in strict compliance with the California Voting Rights Act. Some of you that are, I think, with the school district understand there's been some lawsuits that have been filed to the city, the college board, that were about the California Voting Rights Act. And so water districts are not immune to that, and this new system will make sure that we're in compliance with that act. So hopefully it gives you an idea on the governance. Internal savings, we've done a study on what we project the internal savings to be. Basically the concept, again, is a transitional concept where there will be a staff reduction over time through attrition. Obviously, we're going to realize the board efficiencies as we transition through that as well. And then there's external savings, and by that I mean, you don't need 2 attorneys, you don't need 2 lobbyists, so those are some of the easy ones that you cherry pick off of combining into a new district. And we have had litigation between the agencies, and so rather than now hiring lawyers to fight each other, we will all be sitting at the same table. The electeds will all be sitting at the same table, and that debate that has sometimes led to legal conflict is now going to be had at a table. And you all in the community get to elect the representatives that will represent you to have that debate. And I think that's a really good way to vet the different policy issues that we're dealing with as water agencies in this community. There's some other things that kind of boiled to the top as we work through the process. Ratepayer advocate. This is really to try and give customers some access to expertise. Our budgets have become very robust. They're large. They're tough to communicate for people that aren't necessarily in the inside baseball game on what we're dealing with. This is looked at as a third party to help that communication with the community. There's some 4/5 majority provisions in the SB 634. Those are on major financial decisions. Firewalling debt is another thing that is covered in the legislation. And that's really to deal with legacy debt that each of those historic water providers have incurred. And so we don't want to mix that debt amongst different people who didn't incur it. Water system integration. This is just a quick snapshot. This shows the cyan color pipeline is a Santa Clarita Water Division pipeline. The navy blue is our pipeline, one of our pipelines. This is over on Lyons Avenue. the concept of interconnecting the water system is one that I'm very interested in. It is a complex problem. You can't just start connecting the system all over the place, but there are definitely areas in the community that you can connect. One of those things, you got to make sure you're in the same elevation, grade elevation they call it, because pressures make a difference. In this area, you could connect the systems. And when you're able to do that, you can imagine the redundancy and reliability that you gain from doing those things. And that helps you do things like fight fires and things, the amount of water that can come out of a hydrant. In this instance, there's actually an interesting water quality aspect too. The navy blue is 100% well water. The cyan blue is almost 100% state water project water. There's water quality differences in those waters. I'm sure all of you that have been in this community a long time know how hard water is, and that's the well water. By intertying these, you can have the opportunity to blend the quality of water as well, and make it more consistent for the customers. Engaging the public, as I mentioned, we started, it's been about 1.5 years ago now with this process, and we've made ourselves available all over the place. We've been on the road show. Matt and I think, have given various presentations to every group that you can think of. We've had public workshops. I won't go through the full list, but I'm happy to talk to anybody about this that would like to. So what does the bill do? So SB 634 and Senator Wilk is the author of the bill. It basically takes those concepts that I talked about and it formalizes them in state law. And the main reason that we are having to do state law is because Castaic Lake Water Agency was created by the legislature. So if you go and look in the water code, there is a section that is Castaic Lake Water Agency, and it explains the powers that agency has. Our district, Newhall County Water District, is created by the General Water Code. And so there are a lot of county water districts in the state. We happen to be one here locally. And it's not that there's a Newhall County, it's just the way that the water district differentiated the powers that a county water district has. And so this law basically blends those two things into one, where you will have, as a foundation, county water district authority and the powers that we have as a water district. And then it blends in the things that make Castaic Lake Water Agency special for importing state water project supplies and other things that they have responsibility for. So that's what the law does. It's going to do away with Castaic Lake Water Agency's Enabling Act. It's going to put in place this new, what is termed the Santa Clarita Valley Water District Act in its place, and that will be the new district that comes out. Obviously, it specifies the boundaries within which that new district will perform its duties. So to date, we've been through the process. It's been a heck of an educational process, learning and watching the state and the legislative process work. We've been through the Natural Resources and Water Committee. That passed. We went through the Senate and Governance and Finance Committee. That passed as well. And the bill really was reformed in those different committees. So there were comments made. There were changes made to the law, and it really, I think, garnered the support as we worked on through the process. The next process, you go into Appropriations Committee, it passed that, and then we had a Senate floor vote that passed as well. So what's next? And this is where we're at today. Next week, we'll be going up and we're going to do the same thing all over again on the assembly side. So it's the way the process works, right? You do both sides, and eventually hopefully you get through the assembly committees process. We've been double referred there as well. It means we're going to go through 2 committees, probably appropriations again, so there's probably 3 committees, and then eventually get to a vote in the assembly. After that, signed by the governor, and the new district, if we make it through all those processes, will be created and effective on January 1, 2018. So that's where I'll stop. So I've talked enough. Hopefully I gave you enough background to have questions if you have those. And you know, our basic request is that you can continue to engage, ask questions. The bill is still a work in progress, and I know the senator, he has held us to the fire of making sure that we're going to make this bill work for the community. And so I know he's still interested in hearing from everybody, and that's what we're here for tonight. So I'll ask BJ and Bill to come back up and be happy to answer questions that you may have. Okay. You want me to stay here?
I have some questions. I'm kind of naive to all of this, but the questions I have is, you're talking about all these things that are going to be done in politics and this and that other stuff and this committee and that representative and this and that. What about purifying the water that we're drinking instead of us having to pay for filters, because we can't really drink the water that comes out of the faucet? And then on top of all of this, trying to improve everything, as you say, you're going to charge us for what use of water that we have, when it's ridiculous, because we really don't use as much as companies do. And so it's a health thing, because there's too much stuff in the water to begin with, and then to clean the water, to drink it, instead of what water are you going to, toilet water? What are you going to filter or refilter or whatever it is you're supposed to do? I heard it was going to be, you know, I don't even want to say. But it's just kind of ridiculous that you're charging everybody more money for something that you guys should have done a long time ago by purifying the water that's coming into this community and making it drinkable right from the faucet. I pour a glass of water in my faucet right in Newhall, and it is not clear. Water spots all over my car from the sprinklers. I've called the water company. It says, oh, that's just, you know, the calcium or the sulfur in the water, whatever it is. You know what? I just had my car washed. It cost me $15, and not even an hour later, there's sprinklers around and all over my car. There's white crap all over my car. And that's what we're drinking.
Since she's a Newhall customer, do you want to?
I'm not cussing. Crap isn't cussing. If I wanted to cuss, you could hear it.
May I respond then?
Yes.
Okay. What I do for a vocation, I'm an environmental consultant. I have a company called Environmental Help. It stands for Hazard and Environmental Liability Professionals. At one point in time in my career, I also owned a water laboratory. And I used to do pretty sophisticated analysis of water, looking for VOCs and so on. And I have quite a depth of knowledge. I personally fill water bottles at my tap in Newhall, put it in the refrigerator, and drink it every single day.
But it doesn't taste that good.
I know a lot about it, and I'm fine with the water.
Maybe you're used to it, but I'm from New York. The water doesn't taste like that in upstate New York.
Okay. I just wanted you to know that that's what I do.
Thank you.
Let me give a little response to that as well.
Okay.
You know, I've been in the water business for over 40 years. I worked for the Metropolitan Water District for 40 years, and I managed all of Metropolitan's water treatment plants in Southern California, serving water to about 19 million people. The water in Santa Clarita is as good or better than most of the water in Southern California. The only thing that we have here that really is an issue is hardness, and that's calcium and magnesium. And when you're in an area that gets primarily well water, you're going to get a lot of calcium and magnesium. The water that comes in that's imported goes through 2 water treatment plants that has the highest levels of water treatment available to ozone. They do a very good job. But what you're getting is hardness, and that's hard water that's on your, I get it at my house. My wife complains that you got to scrub the shower doors all the times. It's not harmful. It's just something that's inconvenient. By doing this with the new water company, one of the things that Steve was pointing out is that there are a lot of interconnections in between Santa Clarita, Newhall, Valencia, and LA County Water Works 36. You can't use those connections right now on a regular basis because the health department won't let you. A water company stands alone on its water system. Even though we're all drawing the straws out of the same ground, they have to stand alone in their water system, and they can only serve in their area except in the case of an emergency. Then they can open those emergency connections. Once we're one water company, then the permit allows us to move water through the valley any which way we want, and we can blend some of that hardness down. Valencia Water Company has done some work in the past on blending and on softening and has been very successful. So we see this as one of the benefits out of this is being able to blend that hardness down and get better water to everybody. Doesn't mean every area is going to get better water, but I think that a good part of it will.
But what I'm talking about is filtering it, making it.
The water is filtered right now. It meets all the bacteriological standards. It's very highly treated water.
But I buy a pure filter and put it on my faucet, and it tastes pure.
What you're getting is still calcium and magnesium, and when you take that glass and you see the white, whatever you want to call it, that's calcium, magnesium, it's hardness. Water in the ground here is extremely hard.
Daisy?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't want to bend over. Oh, there. Okay. Got it. At the very beginning, I almost feel like I could go through the presentation and ask a question on every page, but I won't. But at the very beginning of the presentation, you mentioned that there was a group that got together and spent 2 years putting this together. My first question is, what group was that? And then you talked about this. Can you put the map up?
Sure.
How it is today or what it would be? There's 2 maps. How it is today or what it would be?
What it is today.
Okay.
Oh, actually, how it would be. Is that what you're saying is how it will be?
That's the proposal,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, can you go to how it is today then?
Well, one is a governance map.
Okay,
The other is an operational map.
Yeah,
They're
I
two
get
different
that.
things.
I understand. Okay, so my question is, this big orange area there in the middle is Valencia Water Company, and I happen to be one of the few people that has been studying this bill, and Valencia Water Company is very seldom addressed in the bill. And there also is the language in the bill that says that the intent is to have Valencia Water Company melded into this new super agency within 6 months. And my question is around enforcement of that and what happens if they don't or won't. So that's my second question. And then the other question that I have about Valencia Water Company when you were talking about the GSAs is if they are not, we have deadlines to hit for the GSA. I've gone to all those meetings as well. We have deadlines to hit for the GSA. Valencia Water Company isn't included in that because they're somehow this enigma of private and public. So I'm not sure how that even works with the GSA. And then you mentioned something about, I have a lot. That's what I said. We should probably just go, slide by slide. But then you mentioned that you would have this new regional approach and how that was somehow going to be more beneficial and effective for the water district. But aren't you doing that now? Don't you have an IRWIP now where you're already collaborating regionally on those federal grants and things like that? So I'm not sure how that would change. So if you can talk a little bit about that. You also mentioned that you have this $14 million savings over 10 years, which I learned this from Al. If you atomize that, or you take that and you spread that out over time, it's $1.4 million per year. But in the in your March agenda, you have already voted for $750,000 in salary increases per year. So that drops it down to $750,000 in savings over 10 years. So kind of confused about that $14 million. You also talked about litigation and how the litigation would somehow end. And I'm looking at Valencia Water Company there in the middle, and I'm thinking if that doesn't come in, then that's going to be another lawsuit. So I'm not really sure how the litigation would be solved with that. And as far as the litigation goes, from what I understand, the squabbling and the litigation has been when CLWA have been bad actors and people try to make them abide by the laws that were already written, and they don't, so they get sued, and then they scream, victim, hey, you know, whatever. So then there's that. And then can you go to that section where you have the street, where you have Lyons Avenue, where you have all those cross connects? Yeah, so you guys need to know that the only place that exists anywhere in the valley is right there. Lyons Avenue. So there's that. And I also, to the woman in red who was here before who talks about her water being hard, Dan Mortensen would prefer to pump than to blend, so you can send letters to his office. Oh, I never gave you my name. My name is Stacy Fortner, and I'm studying this bill pretty intently, and I'll be happy to answer any questions and tell the truth. Thank you.
Which one do you want to answer? Interconnection?
Start? Can we remember all the questions?
Just one more quick question. Just one more quick question.
I'm not sure where to start with Stacy's questions because there are many. And when we look at Valencia Water Company, the one reason that Valencia wasn't in the bill early on is because the organization known as Scope had sued Castaic Lake Water Agency and that needed to stay out of the bill. Valencia is being operated as Castaic owns the stock of Valencia Water Company. It's operated as a separate company. Once this bill takes effect, Valencia will come in to the public domain, as will the other companies. We want to integrate all of the water agencies in this valley. That's the board's goal. And we will bring all of those in as well. And the bill states that within 6 months, I believe it says, that we'll have Valencia in as well. So, and I don't want to get into a debate with you, Stacy.
No, I'm not going to debate, but on the website, if you look under the Investor Relations FAQ, there's an item on the website that says, while we understand that this is written into the bill, we really can't force them to come in. And I just...
Well, let's look at it this way. Castaic owns Valencia Water Company, and who can force them to come in is Castaic. So they have the vote to do that. They own them. So, and the goal of the Castaic board is to bring them in once this takes place. We want the entire valley to be one water district, speaking with one voice. And we talk about integrated water management. We do have integrated water management, and we do collaborate with each of the water companies, and they work very well, especially operationally together. The one thing that we can do is when we're looking for funds, whether it's federal funds or state funds, is if Newhall County is looking for funding, Newhall County has 10,000 connections. Santa Clarita Water Company has 32,000 connections. Valencia Water Company is about 35,000 connections. And then Waterworks 36 is a very small 900 or something.
But they're not
So
going to be included.
we speak, when we go to look for grant funding, we can speak better for grant funding when we can do it as one organization, one voice that's applying for this. And that we're not applying for a bunch of money that we're going to send some to Newhall and some to Santa Clarita and some to Valencia. We're going to do it for water infrastructure for our whole valley. That's where we think that things like the Purple Pipe reclaimed water system, very important to the valley. That's a high priority for both boards. And those are very costly, and they're not cost effective. One of the things that you really need to do a reclaimed water system is to get grant funding. And we feel that we can better get grant funding for these projects. And I think we have probably close to $200 million in reclaimed water projects that we've identified over the next 20 years or so, that we can better get that money if we're speaking for this valley as one voice. You know, the valley, when I moved here in 1972, before we were a city, I lived in Canyon Country for 42 years, I think it was. We decided that we needed to speak as one voice rather than go over the hill to the Board of Supervisors and have them control us. We needed to be our own city. The city
So
has...
I just have one more question.
I haven't finished, Stacey.
I know, but we're limited in time here, so I just have one more question.
The valley has evolved. We've grown. We're not a little stepchild anymore of the county. And as a part of that growing, the water system is growing as well and becoming more and more complex. And this is a part of meeting that challenge for us for the future to make sure we're doing the right things for the valley and providing water in the best manner that we can do. And one of the things that Director Akins says, and I've liked his quote, and I'm going to use it, is if we were to come into the valley right now and say, there's no houses and we want to build a community, how would you build the water system? You'd build the water system as what this proposal is saying. You wouldn't have had Santa Clarita, which was built by the Bonelli family as a developer, Valencia, that was built by a developer, Newhall Land, LA 36, which has been kind of a stepchild of the county and nobody wanted and they couldn't provide water. You would build it like this is stating. And that's where we want to head in the future, is to do the right thing and save money. It's about saving money and doing the right thing for the community.
Right. Okay, go ahead.
Your turn.
So, I'm a ratepayer, and I'm not so convinced that you're going to save us money. I'm a Valencia Water Company customer,
So am I.
and when CCAC bought the stock of Valencia Water Company, my rates went up 17%. So you'll have to convince me of that one. Another thing, what you said about that...
Could I give you that part real quick?
Okay, good.
Yes, when we bought Valencia Water Company, the rates went up. When you work with the Public Utilities Commission, which is what Valencia Water Company did, they were under the Public Utilities Commission, you provide information to them for rates 3 to 4 years ahead of when those rates are going to take effect. It's called a rate case. You go and present that. Those rate cases were already presented to the Public Utilities Commission based on their condition of operation at the time as what the cost of operation would be. So it wasn't CCAC raising the water rate. It was the Public Utilities Commission that reviewed all of that, and that was the rate case that was made prior to us purchasing it. So that was in effect. It wasn't like we go in and we buy it and raise the rates. That wasn't it at all. It was what their operational costs were, and that was to cover their operational costs in the rate case.
So why did that happen right then? Why wasn't the rate increased, like amortized over time? Why did the Public Utilities Commission start looking at those rates right there?
They were looking at those for the past years, looking at what the costs of operation were, and there was a date for them to go into effect.
So you're saying that was going to happen anyways?
And then once it came out from under Public Utilities Commission control, when we bought it, we kept that same rate that the Public Utilities Commission was receiving.
Okay, so I want to comment on another thing.
Let's hear questions. Let's hear
That was a question, and he gave his answer. So why are my rates go up?
Okay, go ahead.
And how can you?
Let's listen to you.
Why won't the rates? How can you convince me rates won't go up again when this merger in the water services become a monopoly?
There was a financial study that was done at looking at the cost savings in merging the water companies. Very conservatively, $1.4 million a year, somewhere between $1.4 and $2 million a year. We can see is the cost savings that are there. When you calculate it out, it comes out to about $40 per household per year. What it means is we're not going to reduce rates. It means that rates will not climb. Water is always going to go up. Cost of operation goes up. Cost of labor goes up. Cost of materials, cost of chemicals, cost of water treatment. It won't go up at as fast a pace. That's the way we view that savings. We hope to pass that. We'll pass it on. It's just part of operational costs. We can't make money. We're a nonprofit. Everything that we make goes back into the operation, and we set the rates based on the operation.
I have something I can add. It turns out that New York County Water District has their reservoirs or their tanks. We serve people that happen to be on the topographic highs in the Santa Clarita Valley. So when we deliver water, a good portion of our budget has to go to pay for electricity just to pump the water up the hills. And the cost of electricity continues to go up. What we're trying to do is stabilize rates, including electricity and all the things Mr. Cooper just mentioned. We're trying to keep them flat for you. That's what we can't guarantee they're not going to go up, but we think we can keep them stable for sure. That's our goal.